it makes me think of one of the lessons that Jordan Peterson was in his first book. So whether you agree with everything that he says or not,
Sure.
his early work was certainly quite influential in my own self-development. And one of the rules is to assume that whoever you're speaking to knows something that you don't. And entering conversations, like you said, is that idea of listening and actually trying to understand what they're saying and not just finding a way to fight back against it and make them look stupid. And I think that's where we've come to currently. How do we go about opening up those conversations with someone?
I think it starts with the motivation. It starts with that thrust of curiosity, that realization that there is so much that we have to learn. If you have that curiosity, I think it fundamentally, it empowers you to take every other step. You realize there is no need for us to be competitive in a political conversation. There is nothing to be gained. We will learn from people. And as we learn from people, we find better and better our voice, how to talk to different people, how to appeal even to different arguments, how to appeal to different perspectives, and realize what it is we believe and why it is we believe it, what's important to us as communicators, as advocates, and hone that. So I think realizing that that does not have to be a competitive game, that it can be a collaborative process, is a huge step. Beyond that, there are things that more precisely we can move towards, move away from. In the book, I talk about just shifting to more policy discussion than ideology discussion, because there is a lot more room to realize, okay, this input is valuable. This perspective is valuable. This adds to our ability to solve the problem. I give an example of, say, labor, where if you have corporations with unchecked power, they can cause harm. They can abuse that power. This is true. If you have government regulators with a lot of power and it is not properly checked, that leads to inefficiency. That can cause harm to the individual worker. It can cause harm to the free enterprise. When you have workers with a lot of power, and that usually comes in the form of litigatory power, just their ability to file lawsuits and do this and do all that, or just a lot of freedom of movement, sometimes that can harm the industry. Sometimes that can come at the detriment of other workers. These are all things, all perspectives that we balance and that we have to take into consideration to make the best labor policy, for instance. And it's that way with more issues than we realize. So having that policy view rather than these sort of grand principles that we're yelling gets us to a place where we see more and more, okay, we're growing from this discussion. We're learning. We're being informed. Not only are we being informed, but our ideas are being informed by this discussion. So that's one of the things I talk about, just understanding kind of what is coded language nowadays, an appeal, because again, we're so accustomed to speaking to our choir that we sometimes lose sight of, all right, this is a declarative that is meant to appeal to our team. This is language that's not going to make sense unless people already agree with a lot of things or read all the same books or listen to all the same podcasts. And those might be great books and great podcasts, some of which we'll be talking about today. But nonetheless, it limits your audience and it limits your reach. And speaking outside of that, realizing you need to move outside of that to reach new audiences, I think is quite valuable.
For sure, yeah. Like you said before, especially with social media, we've become more and more involved in our sealed off bubbles of people who think like us. The algorithm feeds us what we want to see, right? So we're always going to see what we agree with. If we don't like it, we swipe off it.